What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to a very special Super Bowl 59 recap edition. Of course, my Philadelphia Eagles back on top of the NFL world. We're going to get to that, plus a couple other things, a couple other topics before we kind of sign off for the NFL season. Of course, when I say we, I mean myself and my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing real well. And, what kind of friend would I be if I didn't start out with a hearty congratulations? And I will tell you, it wasn't the AFC West, but it was my best buddy's team that won the Super Bowl. So, man, I had to be happy all the way around with that victory. And what a victory it was. You got you Eagle fans really, really have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it was very, very nice to hear from you. You were the first person to call, so that was very, very special. It was great to hear from you. It was a great night. I'm not going to say, it was a great Super Bowl. Obviously, I thought it was, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that for neutral fans, and I know there were a lot of people that wanted to see the Chiefs kind of get beat up, but I don't know if they wanted to go into the fourth quarter or whatever, 34-6. Might want to see a little bit of drama, but we'll get to all that in a moment. Trust me, I have plenty to get to on that, but do have a little bit of housekeeping before we get there. Obviously, the news that was, I hate to say it, I was a little bummed. I got a little bit of a bad feeling in my stomach where Saturday night, I got the alert that, Kellen Moore will be named Saints head coach, barring any unforeseen circumstances, which is crazy because my feelings were crazy because we all kind of knew that was happening. I guess I just kind of hoped that maybe like 20 minutes before the game it would leak, not 18 hours, but as we know, that didn't really matter. But in terms of this hire, obviously looking at it through our NFL lenses, obviously this is now the last head coaching hire, barring any unforeseen circumstances. But Kellen Moore in New Orleans doesn't even have to leave. He just celebrated Super Bowl, stays in town, takes control. His first head coaching job. Raider Jim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good move. Congratulations to him and congratulations to the Saints. Coach ought to be pretty happy about this one, I would think. I think it's going to be a very positive move for the Saints, who have had a bit of rough going the last couple of years, but watch for them to make another move and get back into the thick of everything come next season.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a home run hire because at the end of the day, Kellen Moore is an unproven commodity at the head coaching level. We've seen a lot of very good coordinators not be very good head coaches, so it's not just kind of hand in hand. I think one of the main things for Kellen Moore is there are other kind of bigger names out there that took jobs, the Ben Johnsons, and a couple of others. And I think he can kind of, I don't want to say fly under the radar, but look, the Saints are not a team that you really kind of think about first and foremost when it comes to the NFL. Certainly not like you did with the Reggie Bush, Drew Brees days. I think Kellen Moore, he's going to get time. That fan base, I don't think any NFL fan base is particularly patient, but relatively, I think the Saints are. The one thing I will say, Kellen Moore, his kind of rise, I think all of our introductions to him was, I believe he was the quarterback of the, I know he was quarterback of Boise, but I think he was the quarterback in that Oklahoma-Boise game, that very famous game. But he was an incredible talent at Boise. The NFL wasn't quite at that level in terms of, production, but at a coordinator, long time in Dallas, went to, I almost said San Diego, but went to Los Angeles with the Chargers. And then, of course, Super Bowl this year. And I think he really did change the way the Eagles looked at things. And the biggest gold star, if you could say, for Kellen Moore is the adjustment he made this year of going from a pass-heavy coordinator to a coordinator who can build an offense around a run game. And he did it very well with growing pains early on. I think the Saints have a really, really good football mind. Again, so many other factors go into whether or not head coaches are successful or not. So it's the other part of it. Definitely we'll all be rooting for him. I know Coach will more than any of us, but definitely keeping an eye on Kellen Moore going forward in the Big Easy. And in a division that, hey, one or two acquisitions change things. Maybe they make something happen in a division that's not particularly competitive, or at least, top heavy. So moving on, I believe it was Thursday of last week before the Super Bowl, we did finally get the awards. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, kind of our picks, and not too big, no real big surprises, at least for me. But going through them, Josh Allen takes home MVP. Saquon Barkley gets offensive player of the year. Patrick Surtain, who I think we both were pretty much in lockstep
Correct
on that one, won defensive player of the year. Kevin O'Connell is coach of the year. Jared Verse, defensive rookie of the year. I personally don't agree with that, but it is what it is. And Jaden Daniels, 49 out of 50 first place votes for offensive rookie of the year. Raider Jim's Brock Bowers gets the other, but obviously Jaden Daniels, dominant offensive rookie of the year performance. Again, I don't think there were any massive surprises. I was surprised at Jared Verse. I did think Quinyon Mitchell was going to get it, and I expected Cooper DeJean to get a little more love when the voting shook out. I think he finished 4th when it was all said and done. But, again, understand your biases. I'm not going to die on the hill for Quinyon Mitchell right after the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. But Raider Jim, do you have any thoughts on the NFL awards?
Oh, what do you say about Daniels? I mean, he just played out of his mind. There was no way I thought that anybody was going to beat him for offensive rookie of the year. And then DeJean, I agree. You think he would have got a little bit more love, but when all was said and done, he got the best prize of all on his birthday to get a pick six, on the biggest stage in the NFL season. That was fantastic. Surtain, again, can't say enough about the way that young man plays the game. All in all, Josh Allen, I'm glad to see he got his reward. Kind of reminds me back in the day. It was back in the early 70s, I think it was, when Jerry West was playing for the Lakers, and they ended up losing. They lost to the Celtics, I believe they were playing in the NBA championships. And he went into the locker room, and they came in, somebody found him, and they were letting him know that even in defeat, he ended up being the most valuable player. So maybe he didn't get all the love and kudos and recognition on the awards side of things, but man, oh man, he got the big ring, and he got a really good trophy there.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up, because that actually just reminded me of last year, actually, in hockey, in the finals. Connor McDavid actually won the Conn Smythe, which is the playoff MVP, in a losing effort. The Oilers lost in Game 7, and they always do the kind of pomp and circumstance. And normally the playoff MVP is about to lift the Stanley Cup, so he's pumped. They expected Connor McDavid to go out, and there's some really funny video of him in the locker room. Don't have children around, but rather emphatically letting him know he's not going on the ice to accept that. But anyways, that just popped into my head, and you're right. I would surely agree. Josh Allen would gladly trade Saquon Barkley for that hardware. A trade that Saquon Barkley would never take. But yeah, I do think Josh Allen, there's a lot of talk kind of about the MVP process and the awards, and at least in the MVP side, and because there are a lot of people who believe Lamar Jackson should have won it. And you know what? If you look at the stats, I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo that. You're probably right. But there's this kind of thing of, I believe that would be Lamar Jackson's third MVP, and only whatever Montana, and, these hollowed names have been there, and we don't want to, put him in the, I don't know if that's happening, but if it is happening, like, just get rid of the MVP, do offensive player of the year, defense. Like, come on. I don't know. I think that's just a little too ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I have no problem with Josh Allen being the MVP because, excuse me, I do believe, look, Lamar Jackson had Derrick Henry. Josh Allen, now James Cook was good, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't Derrick Henry. And I do think truly Josh Allen was the most valuable player, although you could, or maybe even argue Joe Burrow if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, because that was pretty incredible. But yeah, again, they're the awards, the players. This is big for negotiations and free agency, things like that. But I don't think Kevin O'Connell's going to the coaches summit, flexing on Nick Sirianni, his Coach of the Year award, while Nick's polishing up his Super Bowl ring. So mainly for people like us. But moving on to what you've all been waiting for, the Super Bowl recap. And I let Raider Jim know, just because, look, if I let myself go, I might never pass the ball. So I kind of, I'm going to split myself up into two little categories here. The first one is just going to be kind of the emotional side of it, and just, how I'm feeling, all that stuff. Raider Jim's going to bring us back down to earth, give us a little more analytics and, what he always does. And then I have, of course, some, not analytics, I shouldn't say that, analysis. That's the word I was looking for. And I definitely have some more analysis as well. But as I said, just kind of wanted to give myself a minute to breathe, because I got a lot to get off my chest. And with a 40 to 22 demolition of the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles won their second Super Bowl in franchise history. And this was probably the yin to the yang of the 2017 team, a team that was built on throwing the football and stretching teams down the field deep, and getting whatever they could out of their defense. Not this team. It was really, really hard to figure out who to start with first, things like that, because there are so many redemption stories on this team that I want to highlight. But I'm going to start with the one that I personally am most proud for, and that's my quarterback. Because Jalen Hurts has been doubted since he's been doubted since Alabama. This is a man who was benched in the national championship game, came back the next year, won an SEC title game, coming off of the bench, then went to Oklahoma, nearly won a Heisman, took his team to a college football playoff. He was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'll be completely honest with you, it didn't make sense at the time. And all this kid did was put his head down and go to work. Everyone around him that wasn't his people were telling him he was going to fail, and he couldn't do it. All the way up until game time, he was being told he can't do it. You can say whatever you want about Jalen Hurts. You can put him on whatever list, at whatever number you want to put him at. But what you must do now going forward, when you talk about Jalen Hurts, is say he is a Super Bowl winning quarterback and he is a Super Bowl MVP. You can say whatever else you want about him, but those are the two things you need to say. And I have a feeling those two things are going to negate all the BS you're going to spill out after that. Next up, the second person I'm most proud of, and we're splitting hairs here, people, but it's my coach. Another man who was doubted and dogged, and myself. I went back and I thought about it. I never, I'm playing semantics here. I'm going to put my lawyer hat on. My client never called for Coach Sirianni's job. The only thing that my client did was say that he has faith in Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman to make the right call. And that's exactly what happened. Nick Sirianni went out and won a Super Bowl. He is one of 3 head coaches to have a winning percentage over 700 and be a Super Bowl champion. John Madden and Vince Lombardi are the others in that. Okay. That's impressive. No matter what else you think of him, he gets the job done. Number 3 person I am most proud of. It's my running back. Saquon Barkley deserves this more than any free agent signing in the history of sports. This is a man who not only was put on turf that is diabolical to the player, have to do that in 8 to 9 games a year, also be put into a franchise that has been dysfunctional since their Super Bowl. And not only that, but you have to watch an average quarterback get paid while they look at you and go, look, we got about $8 to $10 million for you. Sad. Leaves, and truly the grass became greener on the other side. There was a fantastic video, a voicemail, or, there was a video with the voiceover of Saquon Barkley's daughters. I think her name is Jada. She was talking the most. And it just, come on. It brings tears to your eyes, and everything that this man has worked for to see him raise that trophy. Again, this is a guy who this time last year, I didn't really expect anything from. He was a giant. He didn't really matter. Now he's number 3 on my list. That just shows you what Saquon Barkley has done. Almost there. Number 4, the defense and Vic Fangio. 38 years in the NFL. 38 years. It's a man who's been everywhere. 38 years in football, I should say, because I think there was some USFL or UFL time. USFL. I think it was the Philadelphia Stars. Anyways, finally gets that trophy. And my goodness, does he ever deserve it? For me, the most dominant defensive line performance in the history of football. 6 sacks, 0 blitzes is one of the most unreal things I've ever heard in life. Number 5, I have 6, so bear with me. Number 5 is my kicker, Jake the Make Elliott. Look, things got a little dicey towards the end of the season, into the postseason. So how did my kicker respond? Most points by a kicker ever in a Super Bowl. He was incredible. He even made an extra kick. There was 2 extra kicks, I believe. There were a couple false starts. Backed them up 5 yards, banged it right through. I think it was a 50-yarder he hit. Incredible way to clap back at all the haters. And again, I was never a hater, but I was not a full-fledged believer I was 2 years ago. I am again. And finally, and there's a big reason I am finishing with this man. It's because more than likely it's the last time we'll ever see him on the field. And that is my linebacker, or my defensive end, Brandon Graham. Not only did he fight through triceps and all that other stuff to get onto the field, he got onto the field and he made impacts. He was in Mahomes' grill. I don't know if he got a sack, but he was pressuring. He was making tackles in the run game. It was incredible to see him. And as bittersweet as it was to see him walk off the field one last time, to see at least one of these legends, because Lane Johnson has already said he's coming back. So Lane's kind of the last of the 4. And unfortunately, Fletcher and Jason Kelsey did not get that chance to go out on top. Brandon Graham does. I'm so unbelievably proud of him. and very thankful for all he's done. If you know anything about Brandon Graham, if he so chooses, I have a feeling a media company would love to put a microphone in front of him, and I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of time to break down some of the things he does. And I only pick 6, and that's only out of respect for my co-host and my audience. But I am just so overwhelmingly proud of this team because, again, the final thought I'll have, at least on the emotional side, 2017, 2018, team will always have the number one place in my heart, because not only did I get to see it for the first time, but I got to share it with my father as well. Unfortunately, didn't get that opportunity this time. I really do kind of wish I could go back. This team, this was the way he loved football. This was the type of football he loved, was that kind of smash mouth. And I know the Eagles didn't really run the ball too well, but overall, the way the Eagles won and the way the Eagles bullied you, he would have loved this team. So very proud of the Eagles to kind of, celebrate my father and things like that, whether they knew it or not. But very, very proud and thankful for these guys. But pass it off to Raider Jim to kind of bring us back down to earth. Raider Jim, your thoughts on Super Bowl 59?
Well, again, rest assured, you have every right to be proud and to take as much time as you want to praise the team, praise the coaches, and, high fives all around to the Eagle fan base. And what happened on Sunday was just something that I did not anticipate. And I don't think I'm alone with that. I talked about Spagnuolo's defense, and we both said it during the course of the season. Kansas City's offense is, wow, they're doing this come from behind, win by 1, win by 2, last play of the game type of a thing. But why were they able to do that? Because Spagnuolo's defense kept them in the game, and they were really, really, really many weeks in and out. They were the backbone of the Chiefs. They just did not have it. And on the offensive side of the ball, the other thing they did do every now and then successfully, they controlled the line of scrimmage. What happened on Sunday? Not at all. And as Eagle defense was so dominant, and to hear Creed Humphrey say after the game, there was nothing, there were no surprises. They did not bring anything that we weren't aware that they were going to bring. Everything that they brought was stuff that we knew. Bottom line was, they came out and they played harder than we did. And that takes a lot of credit to be able to stand there with a microphone in your face and make a statement like that, but no excuses whatsoever. There were no excuses. Interesting for me to see what's going to happen with the AFC West. Is this a matter of, well, they sit back, they take a deep breath, take a couple weeks off, and then go back and just start planning for the next conquering of the AFC West? Or with the addition of a Pete Carroll and what happened in this Super Bowl and the way they had to struggle to get there, is that going to bring the pack a little bit closer? There's no more, nobody's going to be running ahead in the AFC West. Back to the game itself, though, make it happen. Force the turnovers, create the turnovers. But then when you create the turnovers, take advantage of those turnovers. Don't get the ball and then punt it away. And they didn't do that. You guys didn't even bother to run plays sometimes. Cooper DeJean just gets the ball and runs into the end zone. That's how you did it. And that was just such a well-played game on both sides of the ball. I will give a little bit of credit to that Kansas City defense for doing the one thing I didn't think they'd be able to do, and that is they had not a bad plan as far as keeping the reins on Saquon Barkley just a little bit. He had a couple good runs in the second half, but I'm telling you, when it got down to that second quarter, and I think he was still under 50 yards, that was kind of surprising to me. I know one of the prop bets we had talked about last week was it was like plus 300 that he was going to get 15 yards in each quarter. Well, he didn't get 15 yards the first couple quarters. It was amazing. So they did do a pretty good job out there when it came to that. But kudos again to your Eagles, because they got the ball to people all over the place. I don't know how many different targets that they used on the passing game, but they used them. Your linebacker they came to play. The defensive line was just all over the place. And It really was. I mean, again, I am nowhere near a caliber of any of these guys that are in the coaching booths or anything, but I'm sitting on the sofa and going, see that guy? That guy's just going to go right over here and he's just going to run around that guy because he's faster. And sure enough, the pressure that they brought to Mahomes, and I don't care how good you are and what kind of a comeback kid you are, only so much of that can happen. And if you can't recover going into the second half and they keep bringing it to you, it wears you down, no matter how good your game face is. So, I mean, again, congratulations and kudos to the Eagles. It was one heck of a game on both sides of the ball, and kind of nice to be able to coast in that second half. If I was you, I would have felt that way.
Yeah, also too, I kind of talked about the yin and the yang. I mean, this was kind of a weird one because in 2017, 2018, everyone had the realization at the same moment. This year, it was very subjective because myself personally, it's kind of frustrating my mom because I think it was the fourth quarter and it's 40-6. And my mom's like, and I'm like, stop. Like, it's not. And she's like, Brand. And now I look back on it now, but again, it's just like they're the boogeyman. Now my analysis of this game, obviously the domination up front from the defensive line was absolutely incredible. I would love to know, and I don't know if we ever will, but even like from Vic Fangio, like, was the plan going forward, we are not going to blitz? Or was it 2 drives in and they're like, hey, we're dominating these guys. Just do what you got to do on the back end. We'll get home. So that would be an interesting thought. But early on, I will say that offensive pass interference, because I had said, everyone's telling me, hey, how are you going to beat the Chiefs and the refs? And I'm telling them, look, we're fine. It's not going to be like that. And I'm even telling my family that I'm there with, like, we're not going to have to worry about that. We pick it up. I get up. I'm so happy. Flag comes out and I go, don't, it's pass interference on them. There's no way. And then he says offensive. And that was the moment for me when I went, oh, wow, maybe I have just, my naivety is now showing through, and this is going to be a very rude awakening. But, for whatever reason, actually, I know the exact reason. I really do believe that the refs can only do so much for you. When you're getting your butt kicked up front, there ain't nothing that can be done. But I know Jalen Hurts won MVP, and he thoroughly deserves it. But if there was ever a moment that we needed to give a unit an MVP, it was the Eagles' defensive line. I know I keep harping on that, but again, I cannot emphasize how much pressure. At one point in this game, I believe it was the second or third quarter, the Eagles had a higher pressure rate than Patrick Mahomes had a completion rate.
Right.
And even going into the half, I believe the Eagles had more points than Kansas City's total yards. It was a complete domination. Now we're going to look back on it, and Mahomes threw 3 touchdown passes and things like that. But that garbage time, that fourth quarter needs to be stricken from the record, Your Honor, if I'm being completely honest, because that was such a misleading 15 minutes. The only mistake Jalen Hurts made was that interception. It was very interesting because I did talk about Spagnuolo last week in the buildup, and I said there's going to be 2 or 3 blitzes the Eagles have probably not seen, and they're not going to be ready for. If you go back and watch that interception, it's one of the few times the Chiefs actually do confuse the Eagles enough to where there's a free rusher at Hurts. It was kind of that arm punt when it happened. I immediately said that's one in reference to one of the blitzes. I was very happy they, used it early on. Again, because I thought this was going to be a battle down to the last second. So I figured, hey, that's a blitz later on that he's already shown. Great. Obviously, it didn't matter. The other part of it, too, I completely agree with you, at least on Kansas City's defense. They're going to get, there are a lot of people, 40 points, blah, blah, blah. look, first of all, obviously Cooper DeJean's touchdown, that's not on them. And Zach Bond's interception, what was that, like the 13-yard line, 13-yard line? That's not really on the defense either there. I thought their defense played well. The only problem was I just think they had a miscalculation. I think they went into it and said, we're going to fully sell out on the run, and we're going to play one-on-one and make Jalen Hurts beat us. And Jalen Hurts beat him. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's a bad at the time. Obviously, if you have that thought in your mind that, oh, okay, Jalen Hurts is the weak link, that's what you have to do. It'll just be very interesting to see how this is going forward, because again, a lot of people said all you have to do is stack the box against the Eagles and stop Saquon Barkley. And this Super Bowl proved, because again, Trent McDuffie and a couple of the other DBs that are just escaping my my thoughts right now on Kansas City, those are not scrubs. They're very good DBs going one-on-one, and they were beaten pretty much up and down the field. There were a couple, like I said, the interception, but that was more of the blitz factor rather than the coverage factor. And then the final thought I'll have, I went back and just kind of watched a little bit of the All-22. I tell you what, if you really do like watching offensive line play, Lane Johnson is the Louvre. Put it in the Louvre. He is a mauler, and I don't know his age, but he's on the north side of 35, and this man is throwing people around. It's incredible. There's no not a big surprise that he is essentially kind of the last one standing. He's already said he's coming back next year, and again, he is probably the best right tackle in football. And Jordan Mailata on the left side, pretty darn good as well. It was a thorough bleep kicking, and it was a lot of fun, but I will say the kind of anticlimactic part of it, this is me being very, very privileged in this, of being like, I won the Super Bowl, but I really wish it was just a little more dramatic, but I do feel for the neutrals out there who probably weren't too excited about this matchup, but at least they saw the Chiefs get their butts kicked. And one final thought, tough look for all the people who said they were going to be boycotting the Super Bowl, because unless we just got a ton of new fans, it was the highest watched Super Bowl according to ratings, and who knows how they even calculate ratings with streaming services these days, so who knows. But anyways, it was a very, very popular Super Bowl. I do have one final thought. This is for the Swifties, just in case there are any Swifties here. Obviously, there was the booing of Taylor Swift. And the only thing I'm going to say is when all this started, whatever, last year, 2 years ago, whenever, I don't know, I've lost track. I just said that you are walking into a very toxic environment. And yes, very heavily male, which is another level of toxicity. And you're coming from kind of friendship bracelets and rainbows, and we don't do that in football, unfortunately. Although I have a lot more fun, maybe playing in the toxic stuff. But anyways, just letting you know that, again, this is not a concert where everyone gets along, unfortunately. So yes, will get booed when she goes on the road. But that's life sometimes. I don't know. Raider Jim, do you have any thoughts on that? I know you're a big Swiftie over there.
Big Swiftie. Yeah, I was kind of sad that they did. I took them until the second quarter, I think, before they showed her. And then, of course, old Travis, it's really interesting. I kind of laugh. It's like, wouldn't you love to see him put the camera on her when he drops the ball?
Exactly.
Instead of just when he catches the ball and falls down, or makes a good run. But they didn't have much to celebrate. That took away definitely some of her camera time, because I know for a fact they weren't going to bother getting the shots in the booth up there if there was nothing for her to be cheering about and jumping up and down. But I'm with you. it's the nature of the game, the nature of the beast. You put on silver and black and you go down the street or you go into somebody's stadium, you think that they're not going to scream at you, especially when your team's terrible. Yeah, hey, it's all part of the game. Let's all just take it for what it is. It was it was the screaming, what you hit on that as well. I know that they were going on and on. The press has been going on and on about most watch. Now they have the analytic, though, of the streaming services and everything else. Who knows how much that pumps up everything. You do have the Taylor Swift angle on it, where even if it's just, a 0.25% that her involvement at any level, causes certain people to watch the game. You hear a lot of guys on the radio saying, yeah, my daughter all of a sudden has become a football fan anytime the Chiefs are around. So, it just happens. We'll see what happens next year. And if there's still all the big furor and excitement around Kelsey and Miss Swift, if he even decides he's coming back to play.
And that is a fantastic segue into kind of our final topic as we kind of tie the bow on this season. We're going to be starting to focus on college basketball and then eventually horse racing. We will be back with you for a little bit of a draft preview and a little bit of an off season, but it won't be the weekly stuff, obviously, until the season starts. But kind of a moment to look ahead. And you know what? I think that's a great place to start because Kansas City, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think there's probably a very, very good chance we are sitting here next year, or at least next year minus a week, and we are previewing the same game because there were a lot of people dancing on the Kansas City grave, and I understand that, but they're not going anywhere in my mind. And I don't believe Andy Reid's retiring. Now, Travis Kelce, whatever. I don't want it to be so blasé about it, but Patrick Mahomes is what keeps that team going. Now, Chris Jones on his side, that'll be a big part, whether he comes back. But I think the way this team is ran. Oh, and also the only Chief to show up, Xavier Worthy, he's not going anywhere. He was incredible. Thank goodness it didn't matter. He had the greatest stat line that no one will ever look at for a wide receiver in Super Bowl history. But Raider Jim, your thoughts? Do you think the Chiefs dynasty is dead?
Oh no, I think it's far from dead. I think that they're just going to have to reprogram. They have to have that ability to say, okay, we lost it. And it's disappointing. And I know it's going to stay with these guys because they're all professionals and they're all competitors. But at the same time, they got there 3 times in a row. They won it 2 times in a row. So it's not like they have anything to really hang their heads about. I would think, if anything, pissed off because they performed so poorly. But I don't think they're not hanging their heads in shame by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said earlier, I really am curious to see with this, the changes that have been made. You got a Harbaugh, you got Sean Payton, you've got Pete Carroll, Andy Reid. That's a pretty good crew of coaches in the AFC West. They're going to have to possibly fight a little harder to win that AFC West and be the dominant team, I think, coming next season.
I agree. And I think everybody got a little bit of, everyone kind of perked up in the AFC West watching the Chiefs get beat like that because, it's everyone says, oh, well, we know what the blueprint is to beat Mahomes. And everyone kind of laughs at that. And it's like, what, you mean get pressure with 4? Like that's literally any quarterback in the history of anything. Like you're going to win regardless. So that's pretty hard to replicate. But at the very least, it shows that, look, this team isn't inevitable. They aren't invincible. And obviously, certain teams are not on the Eagles' level. But it shows you that there is a way. And I think, again, this entire Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll, both these guys want to run the football first, especially with Chip Kelly coming into Vegas. And I really do think that's a great way to start against Kansas City, or at least start in terms of game planning about how to beat Kansas City. Because if you have a good run game, at the very least, you're going to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline a little more than you should. If you're, kind of chucking and ducking out there, being a little more reliant on the passing game, stuff like that. But Raider Jim, your offseason, any expectations or any thoughts as we head into the offseason, or any thoughts for next year?
Curious to see what happens with Myles Garrett and how easy is it really going to be for them to move him. He's expensive. So I'm going to be kind of curious to see what happens with that. Sam Darnold, where's he going to go? They're saying Tennessee's a front runner. They're saying the Raiders are a front runner. Yeah, we'll see all about that. The guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing step back on the field next year is going to be those Washington Commanders. Mm-hmm. I think they're really going to bring it because now they've got all the confidence in the world. And boy, that's going to make for some good games between them and the Eagles next season. Other teams, let's see what Lamar Jackson has left. Obviously, he's still one of the top 2 guys in NFL right now, but we'll see how he comes back, and maybe they get together a package that finally gets them back on top. Also, the Bills, Josh Allen, and I think he's going to be back. Hopefully, he comes back with the same level of intensity and isn't second guessing or questioning himself. I really thought that he seemed rather obviously and rightfully so. He was very down after they lost that game to the Chiefs. But boy, it was almost like one of those look behind the eyes because it was really bothering him. And hopefully he gets some rest and gets back into the weight room and get his workouts going in the spring, and he'll come back and bounce back like the professional he is. See what happens with the Cowboys too, and see if they can do anything to right that ship for old Jerry. But I think that's still just a dream over there in Dallas.
Yeah, Dak with kind of a pretty bad quote, and I understand you got to say the quote, but goodness gracious, saying that they're very close to the Eagles level. I like Dak. Yeah, I like Dak. He's a really good human from everything I've heard and everything I've read about him and seen in his interviews. But come on, bud, that's ridiculous. I'm really interested to see what or if Cincinnati does anything to rectify the defensive situation, because that might be one of the more maybe overlooked stories when it's all said and done. For Joe Burrow to have the season that he did, and for the Bengals to be, I mean, they were fighting to catch up late, but it was like a moment where you were just looking at them like, God, what are you guys going to do? And it was 42-38, 37-34. And it's Joe Burrow just like, looking around like, what more do I have to do? Right. And look, the Browns are never going to trade Myles Garrett in the division, but those are the type of things. I will say, I'm just thinking on the Eagles side of our free agents. Look, Zach Bond, I would love for Zach Bond to come back, but we can't afford what Zach Bond is going to get on the open market, as he should. And I'm so proud of him. I hope he doesn't go in the division. I would love to see him in Cincinnati. I think that would be a great place to start if you're building a defense. I think middle linebacker and defensive line, that's the part where that's like step one for me, is that brute strength and just that ability to kind of dominate at least the run, or at least stop the run. And then hopefully you can find some corners later on, but that'll be an interesting topic.
On that, I would love to see him become the counterpart to Robert Spillane in the Vegas linebacking core. That would be fantastic.
AFC.
I would welcome that.
Anywhere in the AFC, go with God, Zach. NFC, stay to the West, please. Not like he owes us anything, but please don't go to the Cowboys. I don't think he will, and I don't think Jerry's smart enough to figure out that Zach Bond is actually a pretty good football player. But in all seriousness, I am very excited to see if Cincinnati can do something. And then I'm intrigued. I'm not excited. I'm intrigued to see this draft, because I think for the first time in a long time, we might not see a quarterback go number 1 overall. And I know that might be a hot take, but you mentioned Cincinnati, or you mentioned Tennessee being a front runner for Sam Darnold. Well, Tennessee's got the number 1 overall pick, which, by the way, I was talking with a buddy. It took us like 3 minutes to remember who. We didn't use Google, but like we challenged ourselves. It's pretty crazy how kind of inconsequential the Titans are at the moment. But anyways, if they sign Sam Darnold, there's a very good chance that you see an Abdul Carter go number 1, or, you know, maybe one of those interior linemen from Georgia, or excuse me. But I'm intrigued by that side of it because, again, and I know I keep beating the drum of it, I'm just not a big fan of any of the quarterbacks in this draft, at least for the talent that, or at least for the draft capital that they're going to. I mean, they're going to be top 10 picks, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, for sure. But we shall see going forward. I will say the offseason, when you have a general manager like Howie Roseman, it's a lot of fun. And I don't know how, but there's a reason that when Myles Garrett became available, everybody just went, oh, he'll get traded to the Eagles. And, well, it doesn't make sense financially. Oh, that doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't matter. Like, somehow, some way, Howie will get it done. That's probably a little tongue in cheek. But again, I'm just very excited to see what Howie can do. No big time starters outside of Zach Bond that are, you know, really going to be probably gone from the Eagles side of it. But Cincinnati retooling the defense, and just me hopefully seeing a little bit of a different draft this year, not just seeing the same old quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. Get a little beef up front, get some defensive line, get an offensive lineman up front, and start changing our priorities in the NFL. Let's start running the football. But anyways, get off my soapbox. Raider Jim, your final thoughts as we tie the bow on the 2024-25 NFL season.
Yeah, first of all, as I said last week, going into the final weekend of football, always a pleasure, and I appreciate so much that you let me be part of this week in and week out. Thank you, and I can't wait to come back next year. I'll be a little more polished and ready to go, and I'm just looking forward to the off season and gathering as much information as I can. Congratulations again to the Eagle fans, and of course to my good buddy Brandon. And now Raider Jim has to be Raider Jim. And I'm going to extend the invitation. All you guys got to do is win one more Super Bowl trophy, and you can eat at the big table with the guys that are already won 3. How's that?
There it is. Perfect. That's a perfect segue into my final thoughts because, look, things have been getting a little chummy around here, folks. We're Eagle fans. We have a saying. It says, no one likes us. We don't care. It's a little weird. The last 2 weeks, we're looking around, and every fan base on the planet is patting us on the back and saying, go get him. Go get him. It's odd to us. With that being said, it is 5:25 Pacific time, February 12th, 2025. Everyone's bandwagons cards have been revoked. You don't got to go back to your poverty-ass franchise, but you can't stay here. It's been fun, but again, it's been a little too chummy. You know, a little too much positivity here in Birdland. We're going to go back to our toxicity. We're going to, you know, party on the parade on Friday. But everyone else, you got to go back. You can't stay here anymore. But yeah, it's I'm really glad you threw that gauntlet down, because again, it was like one of those things this week of like, you know, seeing the Eagle pump up videos of no one likes it, and it's like, well, actually everyone kind of likes us right now. So hopefully next year will be the villains, because Eagle fans play the villain role so much better than the hero. It's not even funny. But with that being said, in all seriousness, thank you all so much for listening to this episode and all season here of the NFL Weekly, presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon, talking college basketball or only NFL. We'll talk to you in a few months and get you ready for 2025 NFL season. Have a great night and take care.